Now, coming to the today's topic, it is Mumbai Arabs and Arabian Sea. It is the city where we live is surrounded by sea. So we cannot think of our city without its history related to sea. Like sea is contributing, the water is contributing in various ways to our own existence. Amongst that, we have been talking as a historical past of Indo-Roman trade. We know much about, we discussed a lot about Indo-Roman trade. We have been talking about Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, how it talks about Sopara, Kalyan, and then some of the antiquities coming from Gharapuri and Chaul, or Elephanta and Chaul. But we hardly talk about the Arabs and their contribution to our city. So this is an attempt to underline, to emphasize Arabs' contribution in the growth of city. So that is a direct or indirect contribution. I'm saying it is not that what we are going to discuss is virtually everything has been contributed by Arabs, but obviously there are instances when you see indirect influences coming to this trade, through this trade to Mumbai city. The urban history of our city, the Mumbai Metropolitan Region, I will say, goes back to Mauryan period. So it has a continuous history of urbanization for last 2,300 years. And I think there are very few cities in this world who are privileged to have this kind of urban past. So I usually say that by nature, Mumbai is urban. And it has evolved in a unique way as a port city, in a unique way as an island city, and also shaped its economy and culture. When we look at the early historical period, Mumbai comes up, the Mumbai Metropolitan Region comes up as a part of one of the offshoots of Silk Roads. So our story of Arabs begins somewhere in this particular period. This slide talks about the influences in art and epigraphy coming from various parts of Asia and reflected in the art and epigraphy at Kanheri. So mainly focusing on cave number 3 and cave number 87, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the site of Kanheri. Then we have one of the donors coming from Sopara. Then the donor couples, which we see over here, they show some influence in art coming from Kshatrapa art, that is from Gujarat region. Then we have earliest known image of the Buddha in the Mathura School of Art, Kushana period, coming from cave number 3 at Kanheri. Earliest known image of Buddha in South India, I will say. Then the donor of one of the copper plates, which we have found at Kanheri, comes from Sindha Vishaya. Then we have one of the animal rider as a pillar capital in cave number 3, with the Scythian cap, this conical cap, which we see over here. And then we have a couple of depictions, rather 3 depictions of double humped camel, that is Bactrian camel, or also known as Mongolian camel. This is kind of reflection of a trade route in art and epigraphy, what we see in one of the caves at Kanheri. So there is a lot to talk about when we talk about Mumbai Metropolitan Region has 226 caves, 52 forts, more than 5,000 heritage structures, and so on and so forth. From where this prosperity has come? So it goes back to Satavahana period, and probably this is the beginning of the story from where we see this prosperity is percolating down to the city and formulating this as a urban area, resulting it into a major economic hub. So when we look at our own Mumbai Metropolitan Region, we have ancient cities, the remains of ancient cities coming from, you can say, Sopara, Kalyan, Chaul, then Gharapuri, Thane, and Mahim and Marol in the early medieval period, what we see. So I think this is the highest density of urban centers which we see in South Asia. Obviously, this was what I was talking about was a land route, but a monsoon played a vital role in the emergence of coastal ports. Uh, Again, the Periplus talks about how to come down to India and like there are various ports and what to purchase, where to purchase, all the details have been talked about. I will not again go into the details because again, this doesn't fall under the purview of today's topic of discussion. But in the post-Satavahana period, during the reign of Abhiras and then comes the age of Traikutakas, it is the revival of trade and trade routes was happening. So the fall of Satavahana Empire corresponds with the fall of Roman Empire. And then there was a lull in the trade, what we see in the maritime trade, which is being revived as a greater policy of Vakatakas and Guptas. And then Abhiras and Traikutakas and minor feudatories are contributing to the entire system, entire economic policy, greater economic policy in their own way. This particular copper plate of Vyagrasena, it clearly says that the trade routes and the you can say the checkposts or durga kind of thing, like fortified enclosures, have been repaired and the protection has been given to the trade routes to obviously to improve the trade quality, like the quality of trade routes and trade. This was followed by Rashtrakutas, and here begins the story of Arab trade as we understand. I'm not saying that Arabs were not coming to Mumbai prior to that. During Indo-Roman trade also, they played a vital role as middlemen, as you can say a navigator and so on. But Rashtrakuta period played a vital role to give them an identity. The Rashtrakutas probably could have this mighty empire, probably because of the Arabian horses, which they had as a part of trade, because that probably helped them to move faster and reach out to the larger areas. Again, there was strategies not the part of this, the purview of this particular lecture, but Arabs and Rashtrakuta, they came together to form a larger policy. The Chinsini copper plate, which is a very famous copper plate, as like many of us know about it, it talks about Madhumati's son Shahyarhar and his grandson Sugatipa, who was then ruling the region of, you can say, Sanjan and Chinsini region in the north of Mumbai. So Madhumati and Shahyarhar and Sugatipa are evidently Sanskritized name of Muhammad, Shahyar and Subat. So there are scholars like Dr. Mirashi and very many other scholars that they think that they were the Arabs who settled here, and they were the feudatories of Rashtrakuta king, and they were ruling over the Sayyamana Mandala, that is Sanjan, Sanjan unit, administrative unit of Sanjan in 10th century AD. So they were one of the feudatories like Shilaharas, and then Shilaharas had conflict with them that resulted into establishment of Shilahara power, as we understand from the historical record. It is interesting to see that Madhumati is said to have conquered all the ports on the western coast and established his outpost in them. This copper plate has been talked about, it has been discussed with reference to the donations given to the Bhagavati temple. And we have been talking about the cultural contribution and religious contribution and tolerance and blah, 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 blah. But what I wanted to bring in over here as one of the important significant factors is this particular statement which is made in the copper plate that Madhumati is said to have conquered all the ports on the western coast and established his outposts in them. So this indicates the control over trade in the Mumbai region. This was followed by the rise of Shilaharas. As we know, this is just a genealogy which I have copied and pasted here for just to prepare a background of how Shilaharas function. And like so Shilaharas were virtually ruling for like up to 13th century, and their rule, like they started their career as feudal or feudatories of Rashtrakutas, and their rule was brought to an end by Yadavas. The Someshwara was the last known king of Shilahara dynasty, as we all understand. Coming back to the ports and ancient cities in the region. As I was talking about, this is the area, this is our Mumbai area where we have a high density of ports. Again, what we see, obviously this I have taken from after Professor Arunachalam's book. So there are minor ports which we have like Agashi, Bhivandi, Ghodbandar, and major ports which we have like Sopara, Vasai, like initially Sopara, then in the medieval period Vasai, then Kalyan, Thane, and Dharapuri, that is Elephanta, and Chaul. So this forms an important cluster of ports, and mainly we'll be talking about these sites in our discussion today. So if we are to understand this, like there is an area of Sopara Basin, Kalyan Bhivandi, Thane, and like Salsette Island, Thane and Salsette Island, and then we have south of the Salsette Island, that is Gharapuri and Chaul. So this is how I understand the urban zones in the pre-Portuguese history of Mumbai Metropolitan Region. Obviously, this is again taken from one of the books. I'm not expert in this area, so I will not talk much about it. But yes, as we can see, these ships were also evolving over the period of time. We have various depictions of ships in various type of art historic data. There are a couple of hero stones in Mumbai which we have where we have depiction of ships on it. But apart from that, various other like paintings from Ajanta depict some ships, and then we have a long tradition of shipbuilding in this particular area, as we all know. This is a mineral resource of Konkan again, which has contributed in its own way to the development of trade, because ultimately it is all about what is imported and what is exported from the port, and the deals happening on it. So the prosperity which is enjoyed by the region is because of this give and take, and you'll realize that there is hardly any mineral which is being produced over here. So what makes this region so rich? So probably it's it being a natural port, as we all understand. People were attracted towards this region. Then the dense vegetation has probably helped people to the forest around it to gain some forest products. and probably the salt industry has contributed in its own way for the in the development of city. So we shall talk about it in few times. So as we know, uh, Mumbai was well connected by sea. It was also well connected by land route as well. Like when we see there are so many things coming in, being imported from Middle East, from African coast, and from Central Asia by land route to this particular area. How they are being managed, where they have been going. So when we look at the catchment of sites like Kanheri, we realize that it is reaching out up to the Gauda region in the east, up to Nepal and Tibet in the north. In south, it is reaching up to Tamil Nadu, and to some extent, like in some cases, there are stray references reaching out up to Sri Lanka. This is just a case study I'm taking up that how we as Mumbai region were connected with Eastern India. So these Sopara bronzes, famous bronzes in the possession of Asiatic Society of Mumbai, as we all know, these were excavated by Pandit Bhagwan Lal Indraji and now kept in Asiatic Society of Mumbai. There is an influence of Eastern Indian art, as we understand when we look at those. So I think this comes from maybe a Rashtrakuta, late Rashtrakuta period. If I'm not mistaken, I may stand corrected for this. This is a image of Tara, which we have found at BIRC, now presently in the possession of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya. This is again like this image of Tara clearly indicates the influence of like Eastern Indian made. Like this is a BIRC campus image of Avalokiteshwara. This is the same area where we had found a couple of years back an inscription of King Hambir Rao. The local King Hambir Rao, which is a significant discovery, I understand, as which throws some light about the 14th century Mumbai and refers Mumbai as Bimbasthana. So it has its own significance as a historical data. So this is the same area from where we have found this. Not we, rather, this was found long back. And this again has the influence of Eastern Indian art. This inscription of like coming from Kanheri in cave number 11, it talks about a donor named Gomin Avignakar. And he states that he is coming from Gauda Vishaya. So this is a clear-cut reference of connection between Mumbai Metropolitan Region and Gauda Vishaya, that is Gauda region, that is the region of Western Bangladesh and West Bengal. It is interesting to see that this man has lived here for quite a long time, because his name appears as a donor in one inscription, and after a few years his name appears as a witness in some other inscription. So this Gomin Avignakar links is a clear link between Mumbai Metropolitan Region and Eastern Indian Buddhist monasteries and basically the culture, So Dr. Dhaulikar intends to suggest that the Sopara bronzes, Tara, Avalokiteshwara, and Gomin Avignakar has some remote linkage with each other. That is what Professor Dhaulikar suggests in his one of the papers. Also, there is one wooden image of Tara which was reported from cave number 32 at Kanheri. And Professor Sankalia had written a research paper on that, suggesting that has the like influence, a lot of influence coming from Eastern India. Nalanda ceilings at Kanheri in excavation at cave number 25, we have found this. in 1959. The excavation was conducted by Archaeological Survey of India. That clearly indicates the relation between West Coast and East Coast. So religious influences just do not travel alone. As we know, Buddhist monks were used to travel with traders, and traders used to the messengers of ideas and cultures. So there is an interesting story. It comes from a 16th century text, a Tibetan text, and that is of Dipankara Atisha. Dipankara Atisha is one of the a very significant philosopher and preacher in Buddhism, the Acharya in Buddhism. So one of the 17th century texts which talks about history of Buddhism in India narrates us this particular story, and it is said Dipankara Atisha Sri Jnana, who is the one who was responsible for bringing in the revival of Buddhism in Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia as well as in Tibet. He is being worshipped as Bodhisattva, a major Acharya. He took his early lessons at Kaneri. So then how does it establish this connection, like Kaneri's connection with Eastern India? We know from various other traditions as well as the same text, which talks about a place which is in the vicinity of Dhaka, which has been identified as the birthplace of Dipankara Atisha. This is again a literary tradition coming from the Tibet. So it is not just Indian or South Asian traditions, also like among South Asian, we have Nepalese tradition also, but also Tibetan traditions talking about Kaneri. We are still researching the relation between East Coast and West Coast. It is not just Kaneri. We are researching on various other sources in Chinese and Japanese to know more about these cultural relations between the religious institutions on Western Coast and Eastern Coast, with special reference to Kaneri and other monasteries in Eastern India. There is one diary which I usually talk about, which we have come across, a 20th century monk's diary, who was responsible for engraving 2 Japanese inscriptions at Kaneri, which his diary was found in the archives of Nara Monastery in Japan. And it gives us a different understanding altogether about his journey to Mumbai and then his visit to Kaneri, and the cultural connections between his own school in Japan and Kaneri. So again, I will not go into the details of that, because when it comes to Kaneri, I keep talking about Kaneri and just divert myself. Coming back to this, again, this is after Professor Arunachalam's book. The Mumbai Metropolitan Region is well connected to the Deccan Plateau, and we know that people used to travel down to Junnar, Paitan, Nasik in the early period up to Bhokardan and all those places, Amravati, Nagarjunikonda in the eastern part, and the later period, what we know is from the Bengal region and Bangladesh area. These are the famous ex-survey girls, and when it comes to Maritime Heritage of Mumbai Metropolitan Region, virtually every speaker talks about this naval battle. Some of the scholars find that this is probably the depiction of last battle of King Someshwara, the last king of Chilahara dynasty. So basically, even if we do not accept that, it gives us a fairly good idea about the ships and you can say naval vessels in this area. So we have some idea about it. Also, when we talk about Hekawati Chibakar or Bimbakyan, it gives us some glimpses about how the coastal security was looked after. This is another Virgal. Again, this has been widely discussed, I know. But when it comes to maritime history of Mumbai, we need to talk about it. Every speaker talks about it. This is right now protected, preserved in Mahim police station, where you can actually see another depiction of naval battle. When it comes to Arabs, it is unavoidable to talk about horse trade. There were people like Al-Masudi, Al-Baruni, and even Marco Polo, who are talking about the Arabian horses, their trade, and how it is being managed in the region. There are some travel accounts where we can see actually how the deals are made between kings and the traders. This is Al-Baruni, which I think which we are talking about is average 10,000 horses were being bring to this particular region, and that is a huge amount, as we all understand. There might be some exaggeration. I'm not saying that there is no exaggeration, but still, there is a port which was dedicated probably to the horse trade, which emerged somewhere in the Rashtrakuta period. How can I say it firmly? Because when we were doing a survey at Ghodbandar area, the explorations, we have come across some structural remains in the region, which initially we thought that those are of the Shilahara period. But when we visited the museum in Thane, Dr. Bedekar's museum, his collection, we realized that there are a couple of sculptural fragments which he has in his possession, and Dr. Jamkhedkar dated those to Rashtrakuta period. And those sculptural fragments were collected from the vicinity of Ghodbandar fort. So that was the same area from where we had found the remains of that structure. So probably the entire area was occupied during the Rashtrakuta period. And this is the emergence of Ghodbandar fort as we understand, because in the later period, that probably emerged as one of the significant port, maybe in the post-Shilahara or late Shilahara period. But as the name suggests, it has its own association with Ghod. Ghod is horse. So the horse trade is linked with it. See, basically, this region must have enjoyed a lot of prosperity because Shilahara inscriptions give us these kinds of professions mentioned, like the names of these professions living in this particular area. So these names have been selected from the copper plates and inscriptions found on the Salsette city, Salsette Island, and in the Thane city. So we know that at least these kinds of, like, these professionals used to live in this particular area, and if you see some of them, they primarily talk about specialized jobs linked, associated with the temple institution, and also the entire village administration or the administration associated with the habitation around temple. So when we look at temples are non-food producing centers. They survive on the surplus produced by the habitational area around them. So when we look at Thane or Sopara or Marol, we have large number of temple fragments come across, which suggests that, for example, in the Marol area itself, we have found not less than 5 temples, like fragments of not less than 5 temples. Now, these are the 5 different areas of the Marol itself. We look at this like we have mapped those and realized that these are in isolation, like these are groups of antiquities coming from different areas. And so we are suggesting that these are 5 temples. Plus, in addition to that, what we have is Mahakali Caves monastery, the rock cut monastery, which was surviving, in the vicinity of which we come across various structural remains. So the small area of Marod has such a density of antiquities coming from one particular period, like maybe 11th, 12th century or 13th century. So this high density of antiquities suggests us that this is probably the very rich area, economically prosperous area. And from where this prosperity has come? This primarily is coming here as an outcome of Indo-Arab trade. So this is an indirect contribution of Arab, you can say Arab trade, what we see here. See, these are some other royal professionals which we can see. Yeah, this is another important thing which we need to talk about is salt in Mumbai. So when we talk about Mumbai, Arab and sea, so these 3 things come together again when it comes to salt. There are village names which appear in Shilahar inscriptions, epigraphs, that is Lavane Tata, Lavana Charika, and Lavana Lona Vataka kind of thing. So Lavane Tata, as we know all, that this is the ancient name, old name of Lonad near Kalyan. And we know that the entire area between Kalyan and Lonad is fully like covered with archaeological like fragments of archaeological antiquities. There are villages like Sonali and Dhulkhed and like Dhulgaon, not Dhulkhed, Dhulgaon, where you actually find many fragments of sculptures and architectural remains scattered across the coastline of the river, reaching up to Lonad. And probably that was the early medieval settlement over there. Obviously, we have archaeological mounds, the remains of archaeological mounds, which were talked about from Kalyan and adjacent region. But Sonali is the mound which has not much talked about, or Dhulgaon is not much talked about. There are some early medieval mounds in that area talking about the expansion of the habitational settlements. And this expansion of the habitational settlements is only possible when the city is growing. So there are many migrants coming in. There are, I think somebody is scratching on the screen. So it is better if we don't do that because that is quite disturbing. Lavane Tata is one of the most significant name. And what I propose here as a hypothesis is probably that was a meat chowki, or there is a concept of meat chowki which we see in British period. So there were checkposts on the salt port to control the import and export of the manufacturing and the transport of salt. There is a network of meat chowkis, the salt posts which we have, and we used to have a office of salt post. So probably Lavane Tata was sort of that kind of salt jetty, maybe it was treated as. So you can imagine till Lonad, the ships were going in, and that is only possible when we have the very advanced navigational methods, like traveling in the river. So Al-Masudi, who talks about in 10th century about this region, he clearly states that there are around 10,000 Persians and Arab settlers in the city alone, of like city of Chaul. And Shilaharas were controlling this entire area, and Arabs were given the freedom to follow their religion. A mosque was, you can say, constructed there, and a Qazi was appointed. to look after the, you can say, their religious matters. And so there were two kinds of laws which were simultaneously functioning, what Al-Masudi suggested. One is religious law for the religious matters, and one is the law in the court of Shilaharas in general, what we see. Sanjan also gives us more or less similar evidence, as there was excavation conducted at Sanjan, which gives us pottery coming from Middle East, along with the evidence of Parsi settling in that area. So we have two major Parsi settlements known to us from Shilahara period, and one is Sanjan and other is Chaul, also with Arab settling in the area. Marco Polo gives us an interesting, you can say, narration about this entire region. And he talks about the Thane city, and then he talks about the trade. What are the most important things coming down to Mumbai Metropolitan Region, and what are the things going out. But it is, he also talks about types of ships, and so it's a quite detailed account which he talks about. As we know, Marco Polo's account is, he writes in detail at many places. But this particular passage is quite interesting when we look at Marco Polo's account. He says this area is full of pirates, and they have a pact with king, a treaty with king, that if a ship is found by pirates which has no license kind of thing from king, that can be looted by pirates, then pirates can keep everything else other than horses, but the horses are to be submitted to the king. So this is how the king of Thane is being accused by Marco Polo. Now, if we have to interpret what Marco Polo talks about, what Marco Polo says, he's basically talking about Arabian horses, Arab trades coming, like things coming from Middle East to this particular area, and contributing to the prosperity. And now we understand, even in the Shilahara period, in the post-Shilahara period, how significant that was to have Arabian horses with you. See, Marco Polo comes from the region where coastal security was a part of central administration. But what we see here in western coast, it was hardly any time when the central, coastal security was the part of central administration. Even in the Maratha period, this is not seen. So it is most of the time outsourced to the coastal communities, who are seafaring communities, who are expert in seafaring, and their basically subsistence is dependent upon sea. So probably these kinds of, as we can see the rise of Angriyas in the Maratha period, it goes parallel to this. So probably this is how was happening in Shilahara period as well, about the coastal security. And probably Marco Polo is pursuing it as the third agency getting involved in, looting the ships or kind of thing. But this is an interesting evidence, because such details can be, again, only through literary sources. And again, there are numerous travelogues which are available to us to talk about the Arabs' contribution, Arabs coming to this particular area, and especially the things which are like gold, silver, and other precious, semi-precious things which are being brought by them to this particular region, and then even this region is exporting certain things. This is just a comparison between the horses, the price of horses in 13th, 14th century. 14th century, one is given by Parani and the other is given by Ibn Battuta. Obviously, I'm not saying that this price chart is directly linked with Mumbai Metropolitan Region, but this gives us a fair idea how these horses were being classified and how they are being, you can say, sold. what are the charges on which uh, like each category of horses were charged how much. This gives us a fairly good idea in 14th century what is happening in India. See, this entire Arab contribution, Indo-Arab trade and the Arabian Sea resulted into a great prosperity. So this is a case study of three areas which we are going to just briefly talk about. This is Sopara Basin area, one urban zone in the Shilahara period, and where we have found like in the pandemic, we were documenting scattered antiquities in the region, thanks to MMRDA who have funded our project. And we have found these many villages from where we have early medieval antiquities scattered in the form of sculptural fragments or architectural remains. So we have virtually covered half of the region, and till now we have documented 263 antiquities from Basin Sopara. I'm not just talking about other sites. I'm just focusing on Basin Sopara, Vasai Sopara. So it's a huge data coming up. So we know these are the most famous sculptures, masterpieces of sculptural Shilahara art. I will say the famous Brahma and the Surasundari coming from Chakreshwar Talab, virtually life-size images, around 5 feet, 4.5, 5 feet images. Beautifully carved. But apart from that, such scattered remains are also there. Like we have these two heads found from the village of Acton, which are part of some temple tradition now. Or we have such architectural remains coming from Umrale or Wagholi in the vicinity of Vasai. Definitely, they come from the early medieval period. Then these are the antiquities which we had published. One of my colleague, Mr. Siddhar Kale, has reported those and he has published it in Asiatic Society Journal. But this was around 10 years back. But when we visited these places today, those antiquities are not there in situ. So villagers said that those have been removed. But see, this is the rate in which the antiquities are like we are missing those antiquities out. You know, like so you can imagine how much data we already lost. But still, this is from Gas Dongri, and this is another area of Gas where we can actually see 13th, 14th centuries fragments. This is associated probably with Jains, and this is a Vishnu image coming from Gas Dongri. So these are just the glimpses, the kind of data which we have. Along with that, literary sources give us a huge list of tirthas and associated in like tangible and intangible traditions, you know, like tangible structures and intangible traditions. This is surviving only because of the prosperity which was brought in by Indo-Arab trade. Otherwise, it would not have been possible for these people to create such kind of cultural infrastructure for their their cities. Another city is Thane, obviously, which was the capital of Shilaharas, and we have this. See, virtually in the entire Thane city area, we find these kinds of sculptures. Many of these are known sculptures. So this is coming from Amruteshwar Mahadev temple from Thane, then Kopineshwar temple. So 1, 2, 3, they are early medieval. This is medieval maybe. Then from Police Lane, Thane. See, these are known sculptures. I'm not saying that I have or my team has, our team has identified this. From Thane, yes, Sopara, many antiquities are reported by my team. But Thane, these are known sculptures. And each of these represent a temple structure, and a temple has its own system, you know. So each of this temple talks about the prosperity which is enjoyed by the habitational area over there. This is another example which I was talking about is Marol. So here, this is the Vihar village where we have an archaeological mound in the vicinity of that. And there is an area called Paspauli, which is also mentioned in one of the inscriptions, the only inscription from Mahakali. That is what it is suggested by Dr. Suresh Vasant. But there are sculptural fragments which, like coming from Marol area, also has been talked about. And one of the papers on this was published in Indica, the journal by Heras Institute at St. Xavier's College. But these are the antiquities which have not been talked about. So this is a Gajalakshmi panel coming from early period, from the temple called Mahakali Mandir, which is just next to Mahakali Caves. Kondivate is Mahakali Caves. Then this is a stupa, which you actually see. This is the low part of the stupa, and this is the upper part of the stupa. So Chhatravali. So they have like this. This has been worshipped as Shivalinga. Then this is next to the Marol bus depot. This is Kamla Mata Mandir. So this Kamla Mata is nothing else but the pillar fragment, which we see over here. Then this is Mulgaon Temple, Mulgaon Dongri Temple, which is now under heavy construction activity. So skyscrapers are coming, the entire complex is coming up. We are trying to convince these people, local people, to preserve this. But this talks about, this is an inscription, which is a dated inscription coming from the Yadava period. Unfortunately, nothing else is clear than the date. But fortunately, we know the date. You know, so these are the architectural. This is coming from Maheshwari Nagar. This is near Sibs. So the famous Sibs Church. Famous Sibs Church is constructed on the bank of Devtalav. And Devtalav is known as Devtalav because there was a temple which was pulled down and then the church was constructed. So these fragments, what we see here, are the fragments of that temple. Which was on the bank of Devtala. How do we know that? Because we had interviewed all the owners of these temples, and like they have narrated us the stories about like 3 generations back. Their family members have brought these fragments from so and so place. So we know from the exact find spots of these fragments. This is a famous collection at Marol Police Camp. Obviously, this was a known collection. We have no contribution in discovering this. This was found at the time of, you can say, construction of a temple within the police camp, and while digging for the plinth, they came across these remains. This is near RA Road. A road to the RA colony from Marol. It's around 1.5 2 kilometers away from police camp entrance. This is a locally found, you can say, pillar bracket. Now is being worshipped as Ganesha in a Swayambhu Ganesh temple. And we know from where it has been found, because just behind the temple, around 300 meters from the temple, there are still dressed stones which you can see unearthed, like getting unearthed, half exposed in the area. So when we talk about these kinds of fragments, sculptural remains coming in this quantity, it is definitely talking about the prosperity, which is a result of this extensive relation, intense relation between the city, Arabs, and the Arabian Sea. Now, it is not just the economic gain when we talk about Arab, like Mumbai Arabs and uh, uh, Arabian Sea. At one point of time in the medieval period, this entire politics, religious politics, which was taking place in the Middle East, is getting reflected in the Arabian Sea and the relation between Mumbai and Arabs and Arabian Sea. You know, I'll give you a couple of examples and then I will rest my case for Mumbai Arabs and Arabian Sea. That is uh, the entire Christian Muslim conflict in the medieval period of crusades is taken down to Mumbai region in the medieval period, because when we look at the early Christian, the pre-Portuguese Christian population, and when we talk about the records of the travelers, we realize that there were riots, there were fights, constant conflicts between Muslims and Christians at Thane and Sopara. So there are clear-cut references to those. So these conflicts, religio-political conflicts, are being reflected here. Another classic example of this is when Portuguese arrived in this Indian Sea, Indian Ocean. They had to face a joint army of Samarins, Gujarat Sultans, and the Middle Eastern Muslim kings. They joining hands together against European powers. It is an economic game on one hand, but definitely it is also a reflection of the religio-political conflicts which are taking place in the dark ages of Europe. This is an extension of that in the region. That famous battle which helped Portuguese established themselves taken place at Chaul, and then it finally resulted into the establishment of Portuguese center in the Basine area. Again, I will not go into the details of Portuguese Mumbai and British Mumbai, because that is definitely not my topic to discuss. I am completely unaware of those historical periods, because both the books which I had written last year published, one is Multiplicities published by MMRDA. My section ends with "and the Portuguese arrived," and Mumbai Beyond Bombay, the book ends with "and the Mumbai was handed over to Britishers." So definitely this is not my forte. So I will not open my mouth when it comes to Portuguese or British history. But this is sure that the prosperity in the medieval periods and early medieval periods, which was enjoyed by this region, is because of Indo-Arab trade. It is not just the literary sources and the archaeological sources coming from Mumbai region. There is another chapter to the entire story of the antiquities coming from the other part of the trading world. Right now, I rest my case with this argument that the history of Mumbai cannot be written without mentioning the contribution of Arabs who arrived here as migrants, adopted this cultural tradition, became one with it, and contributed in the form of the great prosperity to the city of Mumbai. Thank you.